Hey, I saw y'all sent us an email. So I came back. Are y'all here? Emporia?
Hey Ari, just a warning, your computer fan is
Oh yeah,
bad.
it's really bad. It's really bad.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Yep. Sorry.
No, I was just letting you know in case there was a fix.
Nope, there's certainly not.
Sorry, we were not listening. What was happening?
No, you're good. I just saw you sent us an email, so I wanted to answer your questions.
Yeah.
This AF and the cards have not been read by anyone on our squad.
Dope. Appreciate you.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, Emporia, can you hear us okay?
I stand back where you're fading from.
Cool.
Yeah.
We had to log into one of our coaches' computers because our laptops are, yeah, cool. We appreciate you all.
Is the
Yeah,
audio?
but Savannah's not in yet, so yeah, just give it a sec. But yeah, audio's fine.
Awesome. Just wanted to make sure.
Do y'all mind putting your emails in the chat? And I'll copy them onto my computer.
Sent them.
Um, is Kane here? Yes, yes, they are. And then, no. Kane, do you mind just telling me the first couple letters of your email? Because I'm forgetting it.
MRK.
Yep, got it. Okay, I think I have everyone. I'm gonna go back and you tell me if you can hear me. Can y'all hear me fine from here?
Yeah, just give me 1 second.
Should we try and move the table closer? Maybe?
Yeah, I got it.
Thanks. How about now? Can you hear me now? Yes, that's better. Okay. Kane still needs a minute.
I am good.
Everyone good for me to send the 1AC? Yep. Okay, sweet. 1AC set. Yep. Can I get a thumbs up from everyone when we're good to go? Okay, one judge is good. Two judges. James, you haven't gotten it?
All right,
Oh, James is good now. Emporia, are y'all good? You're both good? All right, sweet. The United States is a waning but belligerent imperialist power. Integral to America's ability to exert preponderant power are its 804 military bases throughout the globe. U.S. bases heighten tensions and risk conflicts worldwide. The movement now to close bases by political inertia prevents closure. Vying to and Vulture. In 21, U.S. bases are constantly financially, politically, socially, environmentally bases, racial, political tension, creeping military groups are used. Both U.S. to launch disasters, force close to political, there's recognition bases should close, but bureaucratic closure kept them over there. 750 U.S. military bases. The U.S. has at least 3 times as many bases as all others. Combined U.S. bases cost $50 billion and $5 billion in newly construction. It's at least $70 billion to well over $100 billion. Specifically in the Asia Pacific, nuclear war is extremely probable given military bases causing allied entanglements, encirclement of China, heightened regional tensions, provocation of North Korea, and tit-for-tat measures escalating from miscalculations. June 3-3, U.S. and China escalated the Asia Pacific war, creating the points of Korea's control of U.S. isolation. Washington intensified tensions, doubling down on full-scale nuclear war. 400 U.S. bases now circling China from Washington, spread strategy priorities as U.S. and Germany through military post-war China's triggering and escalating a hybrid war. Washington's military and bolsters Japan's military build-up. Japan echoes U.S. goals for more than 50,000 U.S. troops on the groundwork for rebuild by characterizing North Korea's accidental threat of Beijing as a danger. Washington zero substance of trunks, sensible policy to enhance the North Korean threat to continue China politics to leverage by making it worse against credit screw and their grip on power coupled with that. U.S. exercises increased rate of tensions like ground war nations. Scope and scale of U.S. exercises will increase by 20. South Korea hosts war streams of launches U.S. military bases. Washington's global imperial force. South Korea down with a self-destruction boundaries threatened pieces of the U.S. Indo-Pacific military. And talking about China, which escalated tensions and created a dangerous cycle of provocation. Response Washington's attack on forces that antithesis peace in the Asia Pacific region and beyond. The intensifying representation of Germany at all costs minor scale and scope. Additionally, the U.S. is building new bases on Russian shores that now risking nuclear escalation. Cone 22. Putin said Russia is ready to counter Russia's objective tensions in the conflict and escalation from the U.S. building an installation just 100 miles from Russia's working bases to which the U.S. can deploy nuclear missile deployments constitute nuclear for Russia. Russia wants to change the European security rollback limitations on offensive weapons. Neocolonial basic politics manifested a global war on terror and imperial military alliances that escalate multiple hotspots in Zari 20 United States bases to invade Afghanistan and Iraq. Since 2001, the U.S. expanded presence at Afghanistan and military bases central to NATO, drone strikes, intervention war, terror, special warrants against the U.S. battlefield, which we have fortified U.S. policy, foreign policy today, continues to dangerous relationship with Iran, China, and Yemen military bases remain the foundation. It also causes drastic health and environmental disasters while sustaining white supremacist patriarchal imperialism. Actually, built solely litigation-based strategies have failed to rein in the U.S. only plans a blanket ban and extension of rights solves. Slater 18, most revolution from thing-oriented to person-oriented with machines, profit motives, and property are more important people raised in the military who are capable of being conquered in the U.S. As military bases in 80 countries that exceed 1,000 activists around the globe now protest devastating environmental health impact of bases from Agent Orange to fleeting uranium emissions, zones, fire ranges, and consequences communities of suffering illnesses and inherited damage. Hold the U.S. government tax accountability countries and hold the U.S. to account activists ready to expand the work not just schools. Bases but to spend the U.S. empire patriarchal racist colonial policies. U.S. imperialism sustained through military bases as an existential threat from ecocide, genocide, and war. The Mastery Project 22. U.S. imperialism with the greatest sense of rival political force of ecological devastation and disaster. U.S. imperialism emanates economically materially from colonial rule of U.S. imperialism is staggering and impossible to know since World War II. U.S. imperialism has killed at least 36 million people. U.S. discretion have to receive the impact worldwide, including ecological devastation for the U.S. military from problems and 750 military bases in 80 countries. The DoD considers war patrols at any one of 59 million metric tons of greenhouse gas greater than most nations. Militarism accumulates and destitutes the globe and encourages white supremacy, patriarchy, and maintains the interest of global capital, even partially weakening the empires of the best interests of leftist shoot-block 15 militaries with sense of the way the just since World War II millions in Korea and Indochina 1 million in Iraq and 2000 in Afghanistan, but fix the human rationalist military speaks the Nazis courage, those who turn the only acquire skills for the race where they seize as imminent in 2008 before we found that half of all revenue extremists have military experience. The military also exercises mathematics against millions in the global south. We killed babies, assaulted and traumatized in the U.S. According to the U.S., over 26,000 assaults in the military, but only 3,374 were against military impunity for male support. Unreal life for capitalists as the military is to protect the American ruling class resistance in Cuba, Vietnam, and Grenada. Say nothing of the liberal proxy attacks carried out by left-leaning forces, even partially weakening the war machine for the socialist nations outside the U.S. moved to flourishing to the left and build back the humanitarian veneer of intervention will be hard for imperialism to self-force the domestic population, mobilizing the war machine will be beneficial at every cost. Leftists are concerned with reinvigorating anti-imperialist movement and ideal for leftists with different priorities in which ways that can transfer us all. It is impossible to think of neocolonial offense as separated from the trajectory of settler frontier expansionism. They relied on military force to displace indigenous peoples from stolen land. The plan and its research are an explicit project of unforgetting the link anti-colonial resistance movements across the globe. Lazari 20, trajectory towards empire started with white settler expansion in the U.S. Forts used to launch innovations that native lands over 115 consecutive years. The U.S. once against the stations. U.S. military force claimed against the world predicted conquest. The war of 1898 was started to form of overseas anti-Toronto. Line between expansion in the U.S. and conquest for our country. Between domestic and global Christian power. Today's counterinsurgency and military equipment are used by U.S. police officers called during 1898 war. The U.S. pursued new imperialism, influential military bases around during Post-World War II. Decolonization. The U.S. used its military base number 2 protected preeminent Cold War bases, century centrally contained in a forward position. These made wars more likely easier to wage wars. Korean War, 40% increase in these increasing concern about maintaining the Central Latin America, Europe, and the Middle East. War in Vietnam, Alaska, was assisted by 100 bases in Japan, Okinawa, the Philippines, and Guam. Trying to still think take easy. Africa would be harmless, no cost in the racist movement, rooted in the U.S. for the Philippines, so related to Richard Coleman movement against racism, regional cooperation, international solidarity, evil, lax oppression, structural war, coordinated work is crucial in struggling against U.S. dominance. The United States should best legal Third Amendment anti-quartering rights in nature. Status quo U.S. government's views. The jurisdiction of the Third Amendment is being limited to American geographical bounds. The plan's vesting Third Amendment rights in all of nature reverse causally curtails the ability for U.S. soldiers to be based in foreign countries and prevents shift to U.S. quartering by doubling down on Third Amendment jurisprudence domestically. KC-19 on the Third Amendment, the U.S. maintains country military bases done since domination, right? Suspensions of grants for agreements against military occupation for this amendment, yes. When American soldiers were in foreign countries like Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, and others there, invaders of the Republic government invited the U.S. soldiers are coordinating their homes to be considered somebody's country an extension of their homes, whether the U.S. has to invade certain constitution outside the U.S. They don't think so. That's why Guantanamo says the U.S. will get high records to the Bible from domestically, not because they think it's what because it's not necessarily violated from 4.2 against feeling back to others for saying those who tour just struck unruly teenagers being based in their countries. It's reverse cause of the planned sells war worldwide. Jacobs 22 U.S. bases maintain economy to one pound on the basis, changing politics and culture, culture and bases made more likely to for those who manage wars bases here, company resource finance and what the other nation those what let's say one world remains determined to take over the world. Washington device more profitable means to maintain power over colonies. The U.S. remain the world's biggest, most dangerous imperial power. It's never any more of the people of the world continues unabated preventing U.S. wars overseas because by closing U.S. bases overseas. Anti-base movements of the squad don't reduce the quantity of military bases because U.S. capitalist imperialism relies on redeployment from lily-pad bases in less resilient areas, playing blackball with imperialism ensures movement failure, which is why cutting all the hundreds heads at once is key. By 19, the effect of anti-base movements spaces the country go by and the brand of machines based politics operating smoothly when the public is on evolving based in Pentagon's been creating small secret bases far from antagonistic locals to acquire the collection of dozens military as well aware of anti-base movements and taking measures to address inequality across Africa, Central and Eastern Europe. U.S. empire thrives on the disappearance of its imperial subjects abroad. The plan and the process of debating it are epistemological ruptures in the curriculum of debate that treats that balances the cost of doing business while spurring the necessary policy details that are key to contemporary anti-war activism. Well, sorry, 20 countries in 70 countries across military presence unlike anything else yet. Really involves U.S. discourse open overnight. Occasionally grab headline things to protest and go on. Might make news to the public opposition, but overwhelmingly foreign bases are not discussed or immutable facts really considered and raise existential questions about what America is the people living in the country impacted by bases, workers, secretaries, and residents connected to economic toxins, war access to not exist yet. Bases will be wonder why the U.S. has been in more motivation for every year of existence and basic right. Logistical supply comments more than still the U.S. to the whole world, which is not they become more likely and more words like more bases, efficient cycle of empire, any effort to understand the concept of war examine this key infrastructure data to manifest as global expansion military bases the rise of news about those consequences cause the abs global anti-imperial textures CEDA resist a Western centric epistemology, splicing the anti-imperial activism for the black radical tradition of faces, their interconnected relations. Springer and Northam 17, it is a black liberation. We understand the concept that to us, an epistemic monopoly in the U.S.'s hegemonic power and is maintained not only through sheer bound exploitation, but through perpetuating Western-centric epistemology. Anti-imperialism has become non-negotiable principle in black radicalism. Anti-imperialism is not only through the lifeblood of people's reality internationally. We have to see the such form and effective black radical tradition. What oppressors do, and the most nothing can do in the imperial court. Not only do the police and military share similar types of police perceive surplus military harbor oppression, but national boundaries in service of global hierarchies to conceptualize black liberation must include an anti-imperialist sense that understands violence as cyclical and tangible violence. As with the first way to deconstruct violence to identify the epistemological mechanisms it uses to justify its actions and establish its legitimacy. Mobilizing against war results in still out effects, but not the other way around. Qualitative and quantitative data proves Rojas and Heaney 12 how people are recruited into activists in the organizations they join makes a difference in how long they remain involved in what activities they engage in. The anti-war movements came in the left activists represent with opportunities to migrate anti-war paths are more likely to still have social conditions. People who participate expose their further opportunities. Suspicion 79% of anti-war protesters fail out, even though an individual may be recruited for a specific policy objective. The activists embrace new causes or join multiple organizations. Anti-war organized flying allied movements represent longer-term goals when activists need some mobilization. Their structure calls and we easily comfortable with goals about the movements building strength by welcoming a hyper position to bridge anti-war activists without the movements as a result. Anti-war activists becomes a way to be people tied to an array of other causes. We're good for cross-sects.
Dope, 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 dope. Yeah, all right. So I guess my first question is, why did you read this new AF against us?
Well, we read this new AF in the semis of CEDA because we respect you all a lot as competitors, and we think it gives us a good chance to win. And we also think that it is a good.
So you respect us as
huh?
Okay, you respect us as competitors.
Mm-hmm. And debaters and scholars.
Okay. So I guess like what's the strategic utility of it against, like after this debate, potentially the program's dead?
Mm-hmm. Well, we don't think that this debate changes that, but we do think that engaging you all on the process of anti-war activism is good.
Okay. Okay, so I guess my question is, what is anti-war activism?
Sure. So several pieces of evidence in the 1AC have described it as activism against the ability for the United States to exert imperialism, both domestically and abroad.
Okay, so I guess, like my question is the 1AC talks about like a whole bunch of like anti-basing movements, talks about a whole bunch of different like anti-imperialism movements. Why is like giving legal rights key?
Okay, so a few things. Number one is that anti-basing movements are identifying with each other that they're failing now due to localized protests that cannot link up to a broader movement for anti-basing broadly. So then when one base shuts down, the United States just picks one up elsewhere where they want to. The plans vesting Third Amendment anti-quartering rights in nature means that the United States military no longer has the legal ability to be quartered anywhere in the world. Like
Okay,
bases become illegal.
now I guess my question is like, which piece of evidence fucking says that they should do that?
Well, we read a couple pieces of solvency evidence about why anti-basing is good, why bases are bad.
Yeah, but I'm trying to see who's your solvency advocate that says get rid of the quartering shit.
Yeah, the Casey evidence specifically says on the Third Amendment, the United States believes that the Third Amendment only applies to geographical bounds of inside the United States, which is why places like Guantanamo and bases exist, and they say that's bad.
Okay, cool. Casey. Okay, anyone else? Just
Well, there's
Casey?
a line in this evidence that says, in effect, U.S. soldiers are being
Not the
quartered in their
question.
homes.
Anyone else? Solvency advocate for the AF.
Well, we've got several solvency advocates about why anti-basing is good, which we think is
Okay,
the F.
just
And
anti-basing
Philadelphia.
good, but none about like the right of nature. Like it's kind of weird. It seems
Well,
like
the right of nature part is this line that I was just about to read to you, which is, in
Okay.
effect, U.S. soldiers are being quartered in their homes if you consider somebody's country an extension of their actual home.
what?
So if you
Okay.
consider
So wait. So
land
you're
an
telling me the
extension-
plan vests, like a right on other countries to like
It vests a right
stop
in
like
all of
quartering
nature.
of
It vests
US?
a right in all of nature to not have U.S. soldiers quartered in.
Okay, dope. Give us a sec and we'll send it out. But we're starting prep. We stopped at 9:22 and we're sending.
And get my shit together, I guess.
Yeah, just give Savannah a second. Homie just dropped the laptop
And my
and the stand and their monster. They're getting their cords untangled. Tech, wow. Devastating.
Okay, it is sent. One of the emails didn't deliver, but I'm assuming since nobody said anything about the 1AC that it's an observer. We don't care about that much. Cool. Just so you know, Wake, for the 2AC, it was real hard for me to hear the 1AC. So maybe record or something. Okay.
Yeah, that's actually a good thing because I was going to mention that as well. I'm not sure what the AC is, but it did sound kind of watery at times.
And we can't read your lips because you're really far from the camera
No,
and it's really
I'm with
blurry.
you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me when I'm this close? Like, is
Yes.
this close
Yeah,
good?
that'd be
perfectly.
good.
Cool.
No
So what I'll
water.
do is I'm gonna move the computer closer to me for the 2AC in all of our speeches and cross-X. We'll keep it this distance so you can see both of us for now. Actually, I can try and make it closer now.
Put it here.
Yeah. How does this sound? Is that okay?
Sounds fantastic.
Beautiful. I appreciate you letting us know.
Of course. Sooner we can fix it.
The janitor's in the hallway, and I'm gonna ask him to clean this up.
Please don't ask the janitor to clean it up while I'm giving the one.
No,
at
I
CEDA.
won't. but I'm
Okay.
gonna ask him to.
Okay. Is everybody ready? Lots of nodding. Is anyone not ready?
I'm sorry, Savannah, what's the order?
Oh yeah, 2 in case. Sorry. My bad. Good now. Semiotics have been colonized by brutal capital guarantees racism, genocide, global crisis, and extinction. Beller and 21. Almost all social spaces, categories, representation, language, image, music, and communication all are nearly occupied with dancing, capital, capital, accumulation, racial discrimination, or experience world's global failure to address global crisis, including migration, for operation, care, social system, genocide, military, climate, racism, hit begins, elections, extinction, other geopolitical ills, colonization, semiotics, spiritual capitals, rendered all democratic modes of governance, unnoted save for those designed for the violent purpose of attracting profits for the franchise informationalized, semiotic practices, function, financial derivatives, reimagining language, reality, and other economic medium to reprogram economy, the politics, representation, and trying to make nature more like humans recreates a selective caring for matter that rationalize extraction writ large. Russell and Mansfield 18. Arwen emerges as alternative development, recapitulates the logic of dualism and seeks to undo trading rights as natural true law, when around naturalizes the colonial history of legal person, where in the name of overcoming Western dualism, it turns the Western person as a solution, nature becomes natural, becoming more like colonial concept, human will legitimize first person. These are rights of party reproduce post-colonial development, including centrality of state partners of resource distribution, marginalization, and proposal for organs and interaction depends on the safer revenue commodifications, carbon, and a broader policy of different spaces for protection to set aside for intensification, extraction of oil, gold, and more political recover for renewed commitments to a large-scale mining and oil-friendly colonial trappings of concepts in terms of rights, nature, focus on rights, obscure capitalism, vast rates, all beings of likeness, and the alternative is refuse the conditions of possibility articulated one AC vote negative to endorse a new alternative language abstraction through books, the similar lockup debate, Momo Theory, and 20. Sticks and stones may break our bones, but worlds most certainly kill us. This is a materiality. Sometimes the world most certainly kill the catalog of the world by simulation. The map territory is neither equal leadership in order to keep the sign and symbiotics. The conditions of possibility for a person begin with the bracketing off of black faces. Linked to most 60s United States, the black population once gets chemical base at the bottom is that violence sets the slave conditions, the possibility of signing a concept which sets the scales of terms of illegible and thus we need a new language abstraction. Next on. Interpretation, affirmative should include new acts to teams that from programs that will not exist by the end of the term. 1 is destroys education. We don't get in-depth research understanding of the formative engage. The affirmative 2 is fairness. New apps undercut our ability to receive coaching and force the negative to read generic arguments. The F will always control links and spin means the DAG will inevitably lose our interpretation, and then they can read new apps as long as they disclose for they ourselves all of their offensive ballot. Solves the Emporia debate team will either have 0 rounds left or 1. You should prioritize preserving a program with historical significance in debate and send us to finals. Case. Russian hybrid attack. Oh, next off. The United States is anywhere subject to the jurisdiction of the U.S., FGF, and no date. United States, all places and water subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Violation of the plan of vested rights of nature outside the jurisdiction of the U.S. 1 is limits. Giving rights to stuff outside the jurisdiction of the U.S. Hella small apps in different countries. 2 is ground that gets a few out of ground. Specific to RON in the U.S. allows infinite oceans apps, rivers apps in different countries, military for different countries, photo for debatability and education. Not case, sorry. Russian hybrid attacks when escalate ripped him in 20. Russia seek on purpose right instability which requires it to commit significant effort towards cooperation, trade, and investment with Europe, often compromise it to proceed of great powers as by making concession rights are prepared. Capabilities intended to demonstrate power despite these Russia and cause of disadvantage against the Western conventional militaries more advanced tech and economic strength. Russia tactics to be opportunity as a butcher's war in. Now a U.S. China war nukes interdependence and power disparity in the 21. In the order of the third interrupt to apply, China would have to significantly near the power gap. China has not caught up with the Trump anomalies, the key economic security areas apart from the obvious and inhibiting factors, nuclear weapons, and interdependence of the U.S. and China are nowhere clear to the power. Partly like to spark a war, war is unlikely, and past crisis move de-escalation is far more likely. Argrove and 17. 1993 and 2006, and neutrality, historical evidence, occurs unlikely, and Pinsley, chances of a still literal once you see a country decimated superpowers, Libers don't want conflicts, and the power people to rebuild the country to make it all lose everything. There's no mobilization, North Korean army, and even if everyone stopped all emissions today, it wouldn't stop warming Casio and 19. There's a 50-year lab of diminution of carbon and it's back to the environmental chapter, but I think it's a rule of emissions up through the 80s. We can cut off carbon emissions today globally and still see another generation of war produced no better for 20 years or longer. And the one you see commits a ruse of analogy with a narration of all black suffering that's underwritten by the reduces violence that reduces the black body to ungendered flesh. McCallum and 18. Anti-black violence that reduces the black body to ungendered flesh underwrites non-black suffering. The ever-present average world is running a black woman at points where and how they continue in history to human body for non-human flesh humanism. It genders man and work for women, man, like gay, lesbian, and so on by naming the black has means human animal stuff rather than obscure non-black suffering is ecological primarily contingent suffering is structured by black non-black that is infected human non-human battery will the actors and the is the prerequisite for waking get every sale protection and instructs non-black is the dismissal of the black and taps to commit the resources to black duty and illusion the ask critique of militarization only plays into the narrative that separates the military and police even though they are two sides of the same anti-black coin Siegel and 19. The constitution of military agents supports the other cooperation to seek violence because of the suggestion that militarized police are to be issued for the people will tolerate significant conflict to preserve such a hope it can no longer afford such a loose militarization applies a evolution away from a purely civilian for the military and police history policing of the mid-1960s red scare 1920s lynch mob slave patrols board and colonial era military there's no way to proceed civilian purity to which we can return a dream of return and their extinction based scenario planning is steeped to whiteness that drives us to protect a future where European man continues to dominate the earth to protect it from threats of people of color Mitchell and Shawnee 20. Literature on human extinction influence policies made all research strategies to protect the future of whiteness protect the years that you can there's a or the single feature such as subjects are at the core of the major political vision their linear temporalities that are increasing get what I are images such as the worst of the potential to shape or global catastrophe for human extinction to pressing down before and seek to protect the rights leading contributors are rooted in Euro-American cultural context and the settler colonial and imperial state logic of whiteness and white supremacy famous for being mutual paradigms and discourse is actually embedded a subject or reproduced by the perpetuate race the global power structure and the plan's reinvestment into liberalism functions to obscure and solidify violent distribution of power resources Cole and Valenta 22. Institutional structure like little perpetuate racial like or legal person was to protect white property owning made property including black persons bound by slavery. This was a tried and legal decision for black people with characteristics of being of inferior order with no rights which the white women are bound to respect even though the 14th Amendment extended to personhood black men they still face systems of institutionalized racial oppression during the first 44 years of the court heard 28 cases involving black men's right in a 312 incorporating corporates racial and gender hierarchies and trying to the legal systems distributing power resources and the legal across different bodies universal western concept of human became a body by white heterosexual male the effect is a hierarchy of humanities with universal the end at the top and all other below levels obscures how systems of power replicated and naturalized by claiming the naturalized process of liberal works over base multiple ways of being the extension neglect how systems of oppression remain intact and the language of escalation makes black people responsible for foreign and domestic threats to white supremacy the 20C only normalizes interaction with institutional power black people do not control the means of communication das at all in 20 the militarily police establishment industrial complex preference for the images and sound a black person to make it sporadic and aboriginal emotional rational escalating defined by an increasing literal of stage conventional and nuclear war that escalation promotes an acts of universal God of the wind out of the scale and effective charge of interrelation in the future the mass destruction of life and property the private industry and the military have learned can inside or outside according to domestic others are objects of surveillance and relevant purposes escalation targets theoretical and ethical communication with the language and discourse of the day different scales of conflict are required to critique the disparities of power produced in and through the different ecolonizing context of racial capitalism black indigenous persons are taxed with the responsibility to make themselves seem non-core and non-threatening in their reactions with others that escalations are reductive to a heated exchange over the communicating that's hard to sustain or increase confidence in any members of potential violence but a broad person to counter law enforcement aggression to violent outcomes to these interactions or mobilize the tactics used to exploit conflict and label this as escalation by law enforcement to justify the lack of action to mitigate the form of violence customary to interaction between racial legally need to participants of race and the way it tells a tale of planetary predicaments to secure the semiotics of the Anthropocene which allows them to continue to create a new world while continuing to leave black lives world when the color world use of and 19. The Anthropocene shows is shaping to put its we're going to conceptual guide materially says from the cautionary tale planetary predicament the idea of black taste and the display of eradication of indigenous peoples get caught in defining the ontological link of geology the human and the inhuman are statistically related to the discourse of settler colonial rights and theory practices of extraction blood that must be both passive and be able to be activated through the mastery of white men these geological relations geologic span Europe the Americas Africa and Asia through the movement of people objects and racial and material categories this way material of the interpretation that places an injunction on the recognition of political mattering while maintaining power through environmental it's made of a mode of accumulation, dispossession, and racialized medical competition for instance, it's challenge the incompleteness of address and the Anthropocene addresses silence would be to understand geology the regime for producing both objects and material with races and never to produce power within the language of geology subject and tracking the language behind legal person highlights a crucial rift between sentient inequality and fully entitled humanity which that works to operate a semiotic system which separates a slave from personhood, duty, and 20. Take into account the ability of a person is allowed to represent that as the absence of a person's character displays or to be allowed this initially to note a theatrical mass by the time of just it is notably little perspective that was not affected by natural body being this in mind according to modern capitalists a crucial lift between sentient and ability for the intelligence this approach is enacted and studied through techniques of severing the captive the body from its motive and will inactive desire the latter being markers of personhood then as the African transformed into slave captive body which is a signifier particularly role in the economy of cellular semi-logical activities of the body in the double sense of the physical capture but also robs the person of his reality can recast the rift as between the body and flesh with flesh transferring to the person who waits around which the enslaved captive body steals the fruit of the subsequent code of writing code doors of slave is fungible property and the community as such in the articulation of represent including each other that contradict capital value is supposed to be dedicated the rift is not a singular event or action but it's rather an ongoing perceptual activity through and in which individual consciousness has actual presence in the order of things.
Is that card marked or is that the end of the card?
It's the end.
Order of things is the end of the GD20 card. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you good?
Mhm.
Okay. Sweet. Oh wait, actually, can we get the T argument before?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
we
did
sent
you
it.
send that out, Nico?
there's something.
They already sent it.
Okay. You're good?
Yeah.
Okay. Topicality. So the term United States is the actor, which the affirmative, squarely says the United States vests rights. What definition do you think you've read of nature that says it's only in the United States?
A couple of things. The first is that I think that we're going to have a discussion about what sort of things the United States has the ability to grant rights to, which is that we don't think that the United States has the capability to create rights for nature that is outside of the jurisdiction of the United States. And at the very least, we think that that doesn't influence militaristic powers because there are also human rights that exist in the United States that we do not extend in foreign territories.
Okay. So this sounds like a solvency and circumvention
No,
question.
it's a
for the
TR.
topicality. Well,
And it will become one when you answer it badly.
Okay. Let's talk about the critique. The Rossett and Mansfield card is citing Ecuador and Bolivia, the rights to exist, flourish, right to life in nature. What is the link to the affirmative's extension of Third Amendment rights?
Nico's going to explain this.
Yeah. One, I think the Rossett and Manfield evidence is about the way in which rights of nature have been naturalizing colonial history and is seen as a move to overcome Western dualism, or in the context of the EF, overcome militarism through state recognition, which reproduces post-colonial development that's responsible for environmental destruction.
So can I ask a follow-up to that? How
Yeah,
does the
sure.
affirmative cause more post-colonial development where we've said
Yeah,
that
so like
basically
the way
the right to exist?
so the way that the AF is, like presenting that, like the United States is able to, like have this jurisdiction to give all rights to, or give rights to all of nature in other countries. This assumption makes it so that the U.S. is artificially projecting its, like hegemony over these countries in these
Okay,
bases, or
so
that they're quartering in.
Can I
So
ask a follow-up to that, to what you just
Sure.
said there? So we read like 10 cards. It's like the United States believes it has the rights and jurisdiction to other places now, which is why they have military bases there. What is the uniqueness for this link argument?
Yeah, so we think you reinvest into that. So like your plan
Okay.
that makes it so that the United States, like still creates, like a kind of, like jurisdiction, saying that they don't have jurisdiction, still assume that they had jurisdiction in the first place to have those bases there. We're
Okay.
going to have link arguments about the way in which your articulation of, like that somebody's country is an extension of their home, like we think that discourse is problematic, and we're going to say,
I've got like
Vote
25 seconds left. Do you mind? Okay. So the theory interp about disclosing to teams whose programs, will be cut after
here, you
the
can take
tournament.
that, Savannah.
Why is disclosure necessary?
We've identified a couple of reasons coming out of the 1NC. The first is coaching, which is that we think that we should be able to confer with our one coach. The second is that we think it is key to being able to cut things like links prior to the round, which are key to having offense.
Okay. Prep?
Yeah.
All right.
We have 10.
10, starting whenever on it does.
Sorry, we stopped at 7:50. I'll put that in the chat. Cool, and I'll send it. All right. It should be sent. There's a delay on my computer. It'll get there in like 25 seconds. Cool. I'm gonna give an order. Is that good for everyone? Cool. Case.
Yeah.
Case, there's an overview, then the line by line in the order of the 1NC, followed by the theory arguments, followed by TUS, followed by the K. So case, theory, T, K. Does anyone need that again? Cool. Is everyone good to go? All right, Emporia, James, Kane, are you good? No worries. Savannah, are you also good? Cool. All right, Kane's good now? Awesome, let's do it. The U.S. military is the crown jewel of racial capitalism and authorizes the death of for the sake of imperial plunder, impunity to rampant sexual violence, corrodes the environment, is a hub for white supremacist recruitment and training, global workmanship.
It sounds really bad.
Yeah, I was about to say something.
I hear you. Yeah.
You can't hear me?
No, it's just like it's
No.
Hello, how about the U.S. military is the crown jewel of racial capitalism. Now?
Yeah,
Yes?
try doing it fast again because I think it just might be a latency thing.
I will try reading the overview one more time. The U.S. military is the crown jewel of racial capitalism and authorizes the death of millions for the sake of imperial plunder. Good?
Yeah, that's it.
We're good? Everyone, that's totally workable for everybody? Cool.
All right, fifth time's the charm.
Fifth time's the charm. 9 minutes. The U.S. military is the crown jewel of racial capitalism and authorizes the death of millions for the sake of imperial plunder, grants impunity to rampant sexual violence, corrodes the environment, is a hub for white supremacist recruitment and training, global workmanship, provides and produces multiple hotspots that escalate and go nuclear as other countries react to U.S. aggression. The plans also vest Third Amendment rights in nature, which makes ordering based military bases illegal that outweighs the turns to military and police share equipment, information, and personnel. The absence of courage, global anti-imperialist efforts with domestic abolition and create breathing room for movements across the globe to flourish by limiting the largest counterinsurgency history of the world. 1NC1 is Russia. It's not responsible response of the F is not about hybrid war, but the US provoking a nuclear response from Russia because we surround the country with bases. Ukraine disproves all war into the card. China, the defense is not assumed bases throughout the ECS and SCS provoking. F is not about the Thucydides traps. This doesn't apply. The Korea defense is wrong. It's about China, Russia, or either Korea provoking each other, which we agree with is not true. Our scenario is the US provoking war by surrounding the peninsula with risk full-scale war because it obviously will lose it fears warming. Their defense might be right about all consumers. That's because the US military is the largest offender of all time. Prior to that, it was AFF. Now the reason analogy one, no liquid, not equated, other forms of violence, anti-black violence, and afterlife slavery. But US imperialism is one large contingent with the US utilizes the economy and slave state based on slavery, which the F significantly curtails. Two, contingent intervention is violence is good, even if they win the speech utilizing theory. I'll do more of that on the K. Third, now the illusion DA don't separate military and police. One, the plan solves the police are soldiers, so they would not be allowed to be quartered on any land or people's homes ever. The F is to define the scope of the plan would be anything else means the F always loses normal means fix. Two, term solves either the alt abolishes the police and the F is complementary to that aim, or the alt leaves the police intact, which means this is not unique. There's only risk the F makes things better. Third, even if we lose theory, it's normal means A, the police would be classified as soldiers, which solves the turn our evidence predictive love it. And 14, judicial that's with the amendment village will have to identify the necessity to fall into the category of soldiers. They live in constitutional authority. This one persuades the Bill of Rights are in fear of too powerful government. With this understanding, probability rating a soldier who has to the purpose police officers become very similar to British soldiers quartered in America. They are within a hierarchy similar to military rankings. Their training for responses and breaking the law has become militarized. Mark the card at militarized. 5 judges would see as distinction without difference. Police are soldiers. Third Amendment works. Reynolds and 13. Third Amendment is the only part of the Bill of Rights that works. Third Amendment speaks to troops that professional police haven't been invented and given extra bills to police that's a station without different arms. Minions of the state seizing by forcing close enough to troops. 6. Stronger Third Amendment post play means cops are considered troops and standing army. Proves we saw Rutherford. No, state governments have a tendency to seek more control with increased military presence. We must be vigilant about protecting Third Amendment with police. Posting as military force case could be made for that SWAT team's rights have done away with the safeguard crazy militarization of police have administrated Third Amendment political police and military have joined forces. Police have become a standing army of composed of professional soldiers not disbanded, which is exactly what the founders feared. Mitchell and Chowdhury. One is about white extinction narratives that don't consider the disproportionate impacts of BIPOC people. No link or saying basing is in the context of settler colonial legacy of native necessity and afterlife slavery is bad. 2. Double term degrees of analogy. BIPOC features at the core of this article lumps anti-black, indigenous, and people of color way more than the F ever did. Now cold blunted what is a legal person in imperialist history. We agree the way the Constitution is deployed now is to allow the U.S. to wage imperial wars abroad without basing. Choose the F does not extend the 14th Amendment. No link. Third, all answer more of this on the K under the rights K link. Now the language of escalation bad. The DOS evidence. Well, we don't blame black people for U.S. escalation. Quite the opposite. We blame the U.S. anti-black legacy for it. 2. The F never depicted black people the way their card presumes. No link. In turn, we abolish U.S. militarism, which is a means to co-opt and establish hegemonies of anti-black troops. The use of card 1. The F is not a defense meant to be seen as an analytic. We think U.S. imperialism, settler colonialism, the afterlives of slavery, marking geological shift in the planet, which Usopp agrees with. 2. Racialized impacts of climate change is our argument. Now the Judy card 1. Strategically deploying the massive rights is good in this instance. 2. I'll do more of this on the K. Theory. We disclosed a new app that only follow-up was if we had read any cards previously or if any of the tournaments or if any of our teammates had the answer we gave was no, which is true. And other questions were asked. 2. Counter-interpret new apps against Emporia. CEDA argued. 8. Argument innovation mandating disclosure or disclosures new apps by removing their strategic incentive. B. Critical thinking courses debaters to think on their feet rather than scripting to their coaches. It's reciprocal because under our model they can bring new apps against us. 3. Journalism. DA apps are a sign of respect only to be disclosed to all the apps against where once we knew we could be disrespectful for us to come to the people's tournament without the same intellectual and competitive rigor we had for the NDT. To the 5th app we broke in 2 weeks and it's not an attempt to target Emporia but to respect the talent of our opponents. 4. No link to their offense. B. It's not reciprocal. They didn't disclose new 1 and 2 strategies. They prepped for CEDA. B is no bright line. There's no quantifiable distinction between 40 minutes pre-round prep and the 20 minutes in round that they got before. They had to give a 1 and C. Default raceability disclosures and norm not a rule. There's no resolution basis for debate existed before the wiki and hard debate's good debate. Now they're arguing about sending Emporia to finals. 1 counter-interpret Emporia should be in finals if Emporia wins the debate, reducing the round to how we will all miss Emporia and hard piss about the greedy racist boards of regents for canceling the program. Obvious the fact that the value of debate is classic for tactics and political strategy. You should think they see that this round away from its content moves our ability to explore politics and hold debaters culpable for situations beyond their control. We all spent a decade in this activity and should be remembered for the fantastic fucking debaters. If Emporia gets to finals, it should be because they won this debate, not because of an institutional crisis. 2. Affectability. DA, our careers end here. 2. Every senior league like us, which should never be understood within the confines of a single debate. Voting for whose presence in finals do you think would be more meaningful? Relies on judge intervention to determine which debaters they like most. This relies on the politic of affectability, which is always anti-black and trains public requiring judges to invoke intimate knowledge of the debaters to render decisions and possibly fuck because none of you know what it took for us to get here, whose legacies we're indebted to, and who in turn is indebted to us. There are co-optics and sending Emporia to finals not save their program. If it's a question of cementing their legacy, you should ask if competitive success truly determines the worth of a debater. The idea that advancing one round further is a make it a determinative of program or debater faces all the institutional and constraints that limit success in debate, and that causes response when debaters internally shortcomings its faults of their own. The only thing you should use your ballot for is incentivize clash over tactics. Now T, we meet plan in a vacuum, and B, U.S. has jurisdiction on all bases. Nature is entire physical universe, all created by humans, not biology, by geography, OALD, and no DL plants, animals, and things that exist in the universe, not made by people. A lot of nature conservation is protecting habitats preferred. A, intent to specify the resolution adopting in U.S. just nature. B, after on it turns fair limits, and ground comes first because the NEG can read endless clicks, and this topic is NEG bias. The expansive nature of this app in particular means they get country picks and international dissents to check back, see, shift, decide their intro does not speak to how the U.S. imposes jurisdiction globally. Only our model ensures debaters get skills to combat global imperialism because they default to Westphalian notions of statehood, which is bad default to raceability. Competing interests cause race to the bottom. Down the K, weigh the play based on justifications provided. A, clash cost benefit analysis requires you to use separate epistemology, key to competitive equity and best research. B, education. Even if theory is good to talk about, debate about the plan is good in its context and contingent struggles over personhood when the government rationality to transform political realities because world practices make let's make the most ethical demands and instill debates with revolutionary potential. C, legal personhood rights policy are not applied to statecraft to engage the tools we have to false trade and genocide has to be met the resistance at Lazari. D, legal education on imperialism is good to build interdisciplinary dialogues to deconstruct hegemonic worldviews. Learning the details of policy elements by anti-basic activism turns autonomy to localized anti-basic movements get circumvented due to geographic redeployment. That's why in Lazari floating picture of voters first choice office makes it possible. Yeah, because infinite nature and block articulating explaining are impossible and sandbags the reason, but after the reason the perm solves. I'm going to do the links now. First, Bella research from this history of rights jurisprudence is indebted to white property accumulation, which the AFF inverse by bending the forces that enable imperial plunder. The root terms of abstraction provides no means to avert redressing the imperial balance of following a legal reverse key because it also exploit contradictions of Western law to avoid in advance to advance decolonial efforts, which is what means particularity is good and abstraction is bad. To enaction DA King in 17 was actually support to Christ white identity, not demanding the recognition of white privilege, that's customer privilege, of all liberal recognition with promise of self-neutralization of victim reputation, never seeking for a cause for recognition to overcome and calling for recognition that becomes defined by gender adherence to the degree of this product illustrates white defense of racial privileges, but the ontological nature of subjects. While there is a value in recognition of privilege, the public focus on material structures that produce and build a political movement that forced transformation of structures is flawed, founded on ontological foster racial effect, to products that produced through white political support, not identity, marked the word at identity. Now the Ross and man's full card bundling is about equitable Bolivia, giving nature the right to life, exist, and flourish that cause humanist approximation. The plan best Third Amendment anti-quartering rights, which is vastly distinct. Two, turn Third Amendment rights are good. They limit the U.S. ability to enact imperialism on the global South countries like Bolivia, where it is trying. Third, no uniqueness, constitutionalism, and currently enemies fascism. The status quo. The plan does not increase their power. It's not like the military would invade their homes without the plan. For strategic essentialism is good. Using the Third Amendment against 270 exposes the hypocrisy of imperialism and institutes the ability of the U.S. to exert preponderant power. That's KC 5. American exceptionalists in DA. Their argument boils down to not using the U.S. law ever because anti-basing activists called for the plan, ignoring transnational demands against U.S. imperialism with Western chauvinism that dims into where activist advocacy to vague protests in the ivory tower theories and that cannot tend to global scale imperialism. That's Lazari. Perm do both three net benefits. A, asks global anti-imperial textures. Key to resist Western-centric epistemology, all opposes the binary between anti-imperial activism and the black radical tradition, which erases and important historical activism, but also proves that all risks of perpetuating Western epistemological frames into the global South and oppressors elsewhere separate from U.S. power machines. First, they count all their very violent intersections that emerge when the U.S. aims to maintain their global hierarchy. That's Springer and Norton. B, only the analytic and the perm can respond to global anti-blackness mode. And 14, cosmopolitan civil society is not just a national but racial element. States operate in statelessness as the mobilization of differences. The nature of national, racial, and humanism is regulated in the service of the opposites of an individual, but the state is protect and project as state is necessary distinction between the national and the improvisational mechanics of future dispossession, plus the history of racial violence and part and parcel of narcotic sovereignty marked toward at sovereignty. And third is organizing around epistemic high intensity events is the best way to ensure movement sustainably and energize. One, incentives anti-war activists have to rapidly mobilize large numbers, which forces them to frame issues in ways that align with other movements. Two, have information anti-war activists routinely collaborate with members of other movements, which exposes them to a wider set of issues and foster interpersonal connections that encourage branching out. Their empiric 79% of anti-war activists spill out. That's the Rojas evidence. Now alt just adds one is logistics and DA. The banning basing is critical for logistical support of military alliances and global war on terror by training for militaries to fight on behalf of the U.S. from NATO to Africa to Iraq. Logistical colonization means their Atlantic centrism always leaves Africa to side diaspora out in the cold, which only the plan solves. That's Lazari. Lillard cutting DA. Localized anti-base activism gets circumvented with the USA transition to basing, building bases in less well-off countries who know they can't resist well, never cleaning up the bases they leave behind. Only the plan challenges the U.S. legal ability to build and sustain bases regardless of geography. That's fine in Lazari. New Cold War DA. Straight-turn semiotics link. U.S. bases are a crucial component of encircling China to bolster military confrontation. This extends the legacy of the Cold War into communism to the present through material apparatus of the base of fortress America that animates neo-fascism and escalates the nuclear war through brinkmanship. That's Chun and Lazari. Cool.
Are you ready?
Yep.
What piece of evidence have you read that says that the U.S. has the ability to give rights to things outside of the United States?
It's not, U.S. bases are not outside of the United States jurisdiction. Your evidence from the 1 and C says jurisdiction.
Sure. I'm not talking about T. We're talking about solvency. The KC evidence.
Yeah, that's the KC evidence.
Yeah. Where? Read a line.
The line that Ari read to you in the 1AC. Let me pull it back up.
Yeah, I don't think it says anything.
Well, that's not true. U.S. soldiers
that brings up the
the
question of whether the U.S. government has to obey its constitution when acting outside of the U.S. There is no declarative statement that says that the U.S. has the capability or the means to do that.
Quartered in their homes if you consider someone's country an extension of their home. That is literally what it says.
Then paragraph, that brings up a question of whether the US government has to obey its constitution when it's acting
Yes.
outside of the US itself. Where in the evidence does it answer that
Yes.
question with yes?
They don't think so. That's why Guantanamo exists.
Okay,
the U.S.
but
get a
where
high
does
mark
your
on the
author
Third
say
Amendment
they
from a
think
domestic
so?
view.
It seems like a rhetorical question to me.
That's not what it's saying. It's saying that because the U.S. currently doesn't think so, it's not abiding to its own
Okay,
constitution, which is bad.
That's fine. Where in the card do you think that it says that the Casey evidence disagrees with that statement?
It says that the U.S. hypocrisy is wrong and that they're using that
The
frame
U.S.
to violate it.
the U.S. hypocrisy to violate its own constitution in other countries is bad. We all agree. Which
Yes.
piece of evidence have you read that says that the plan text solves that and that the plan can be enacted and will be enforced?
The next card is the Jacobs card that contextualizes this card that says preventing U.S. wars overseas begins by closing U.S. bases overseas.
And where does that talk about the plan?
There's also the line for the Casey card. Might those countries have grounds for grievance against U.S. military occupation?
And when does that make a statement
Yes.
about
Yes.
legal precedent
It asks a
internationally or
question.
in the U.S.?
It asks a question, and then the line says literally yes. It says,
what is the
might those
explanation
countries,
for that?
Might those countries have grounds for grievance against military occupation?
Legal grievance,
Yes.
though.
Yes,
Obviously.
that's what the AFF leads to.
For this amendment.
I don't think that's what your evidence says.
That's what we just read out loud, so it does say that.
I think you're a little liar. This evidence surely doesn't
We're
say
not.
that. When historically has the U.S. given a right to things that are outside of the jurisdiction or the continental U.S.?
Well, they give rights to people on bases all the time. That's our argument, which is fucked up, and they should literally get rid of those bases.
What other countries have given a right to nature for nature that is not in their home country?
Rights of oceans.
Rights of oceans, all of water. If you think about it, water flows throughout the entire world.
What country did
Like,
that?
You can't
What
just
country did
cordon
that?
off nature.
Which country did that?
The BB&J agreement.
That's not a
ratified.
country. That's an international agreement.
Correct.
Yeah,
The US
that's
did.
that
We're
the US
starting
agreed
prep.
to.
Hey, perms besides perm do both?
Only perm do both.
Okay, what were the standards on framework?
Yep, they were, first was clash, second education, third legal personhood and rights policy are inevitable as a statecraft engagement good. Last one, legal education on imperialism good. That's the extension of the Vine and Lazare evidences from the 1AC.
Okay, what are the net benefits of the perm?
Yep. First is an extension of the Springer-Northam card from the 1AC, which is about challenging Western-centric epistemologies.
Okay.
Second was the Moden card that I read. Third was an extension of the Rojas card from the 1AC. Do you want me to walk you through that too?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Cool.
Stopped at 3. I'm sending it out. Can you hand me the stamp, please? Yeah. First things first, did everyone get the email? Dope, dope, dope. Second question, is everyone ready for an order? Oh, you're not ready for an order, King. Gotcha.
Good.
Oh, you're good? Oh, dope, 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 dope. It's the K.
Can you give me just like 30 seconds, Nico?
Take your time.
Wake's good whenever you are good, Nico.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Alrighty, I am ready to go.
Wonderful. Okay. Everyone's good to go. Let's get it. Boat negative to heat Hortense Spills warning that 6 inches may break my boat's head. Worse will most certainly kill me, which super trust in the needs to challenge the materiality of symbiotes. They have considered our uniqueness, glyph for our impacts that symbiotes have been colonized by racial capitalism and all forms of expressivity have been captured the elections of capital accumulation, radicalism, accession, which makes the blend a new investment into crisis. That's valor evidence that can't waste one on magnitude. There's a world scale failure to address global crisis, which lacks in militarism, genocide, and climate change, which makes extinction inevitable too. Its probability colonization of symbiotes has rendered democratic modes of governance unable to stop the extraction of profits from blackened populations, make circumvention of the planet fucking inevitable. 3 is time frame. Niggas are dying now, which super trends the need for a disruption wise for hyper reality turns the afterwards can kill the afterlife and serving structures to be to make it so that all policies are affected by anti-blackness, which means the conditions possibility for catalog diversity and begins with the practicing of blackness as the bomb of the racial hierarchy, the way that non-black communities again distance themselves from black people overrepresented as slaves, criminals, and ineligible for personhood. Now, but most of their answers to the impact level of debate are pretty fucking shallow. First off, straight term makes no sense when you your USFT plan still makes still is invested in the democratic forms of governance. The bill or evidence is fucking impact turning it makes it so that co-option of black achievement is fucking inevitable. And also, the king evidence don't know fucking link. It's not an action refusal. It's a concept of political foundational. Let's handle the framework level debate. The K mainstream interpretation of the links are disastrous beyond consequences of the plan, and our counter interpretation is that you should view the way as rhetorical artifact with images of representations intentionally programmed, hold them to the whole when they see beyond as illusory, which means this debate is not about orientation, it's about the best action to resist an anti-black world. The plan is given objective value by the images of representations of suffering throughout the way you see, hold them accountable. The negative is dialogue, reject their call to look at the blended vacuum and justify statements 50 seconds of clan rhetoric that no one is held accountable for, that no one is held accountable for because the land in a vacuum is seen as a good idea, which mutes NEG offense about the significance of that rhetoric. Don't allow white fluidity, tie them to their desire to export policy making that's mutually exclusive with the call for a new language of instruction because it lacks in a political ontology that requires black prayers for equal access to the rule of law and acceptance of repeated violence that maintains a hierarchy of white over black debate. Is this facing a challenge competing methods of institutional engagement as an educational stasis point. However, there needs to be a practice to engage with the words that influence that process. The representations must come first. Legal rights are a strategy of image management by neoliberal governance that weaponizes black liberation and justify imperial invasion, quiet radicalism, dilute class consciousness, and strong global influence that works in 21. The language of black achievement and suffering and resistance has justified counterterrorism. Black empowerment with state sanctioned strategy of neoliberal governance. Interpolate black Americans into U.S. empire building projects. Governmental agencies circulate images of black liberation to promote democracy, granting rights. Black people as a strategy of image management, official anti-racism, quiet radicalism, dilute class consciousness, and short of the moral rationale for U.S. global influence, a strategy to legitimize political authority of the sovereign security state. Now, most of their offense to the alternative is fucking defense. In actuality, let's talk about first the perm. Doesn't at all, because the still inclusion of the state makes it so that the co-option is fucking inevitable. That's Edwards and the fucking Beller analysis about the way that democratic governance is based on the extraction of profits from black populations. They say that it's invested in the black radical tradition. Fuck no. Instead, it links more to the Edwards evidence because it's about the way in which they have become modified and fungibilized black flesh to make it so they are always seen as a political tool for them. They say they challenge Western imperialism, but what the fuck? They use the United States federal government, so that makes it so they only fucking are always going to be invested in those different forms. Moon evidence flows negative. Your plan still assumes the U.S. can protect from itself and stop its own projections of violence, which is fucking an impact on all of Moon, and definitely wouldn't agree with USFG inclusion of the F and the Roja stuff. There's no spill out effect, and still based in fucked up liberal politics that assume that one debate doesn't assumes that debate spills out past these fucking ballots, but makes it so that you are constantly exchanging narratives of violence in order to secure the ballot as a form of currency. They say they create better movements, but ignore our fucking Malaku evidence about the way in which the liberal politics based in rights is always fucking going to be leading to a crowd out of black suffering, because it ignores the way that anti-blackness has influenced every scale of policymaking. Their empiric spill out argument doesn't make any sense in the context of our alternative, in which views prefer the alternative's language of abstraction to views blackness as a fundamental experience outside of ontological and historic discourse that makes blackness an interpretive lens to interrogate the assumptive logics of the Macy's fantasy of universal liberation. That's possibly because they have recreated regimes of violence that bar black people from redemption through legal personhood. All is key to disrupt those fantasies by destroying the cognitive maps that draw borders between person and non-person. Even if I lose the alt, if I win that link, that's enough for you to reject the app, because it's invest in rhetorical infrastructures of anti-blackness, and voting nay would send them back to the drawing board for approaches that prioritize a black radical agenda for the end of the world. That's some mumble theory evidence. They say logistics exists, and saying that logistics make it so that it leaves activists away, but no, you instead play more into those logistics by allowing the U.S. to control the means of the means of military control within certain areas. That makes it so that they are able to just create this quartering right, but then in another instance create another right to fucking have bases in different territories on the ocean or international waters in which they can't have that shit anyway. That's all the fucking cross-sex about the way in which they say that it leads to fucking about the rights of oceans. Cold War just that doesn't make any goddamn sense in the context of our argument about the way in which neo-fascism is the fucking status quo, and the way that the neoliberal governance of the U.S. is inevitably going to commodify those things. Let's handle some of these other benefits they have, which is one, the class stuff on the framework level doesn't answer our argument about needing more than clash of the plan, but instead about the whole thing, the entirety of the YC makes it so we aren't that mooting. The floating pick stuff doesn't make any goddamn sense. Not a pick. We think your AF is really bad. It's also the law inevitable stuff doesn't ignore our argument, ignores our argument about the way that law is shaped on killing niggas, and also ignores our argument about the way in which that law inevitable stuff just leads to a recreation of those forms of democratic modeling that make it inevitable that it's going to be locked in now. The call to key rejection of those narratives in their legal education and shit in the context of imperialism makes it so they are always invested in that kind of imperialism through their use of the state. Now, let's handle the link debate. First, there's a fucking body snatching dissat to the perm, and the links are dissats to the permutation. The perm snatches my flesh to make their policy successful, demonstrates a philophobic attachment to blackness that uses black people as political props to animate their project in one moment, the crowd out black on another. The impacts of fungibility of the reduction of ice to cargo to be utilized at will by whiteness. Now, extend the extraction dissat. The way sees attempts to establish a right in nature, naturalize the colonial history, and is seen as a means to overcome Western dualism through state recognition, which reproduces the post-colonial development responsible for environmental destruction. All of their offenses basically this essentialism good stuff, but it doesn't answer our argument about the way that rights of nature lock in forms of violence that make it so they the moral environmental damage is just created in other ways and create different isolated spaces. There, Casey evidence says when American soldiers are in foreign countries like Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, and others, they're invaders. Even if a puppet government invited them, U.S. soldiers are quartered in their homes. If you consider somebody's country an extension of their home, first doesn't talk about fucking nature, at least talk about a damn tree, but it's a link to the way that their politics treat other countries as resources in the first place. There, Lazar evidence says the global expansion of military bases with the rise of U.S. empire, consequence and cause is an example of the way in which their projection of nature to military bases show that they're always invested in this militarizing of the environment. Even as the 1AC's proposal foregrounds not extraction, the state depends on its revenue through the commodification of carbon and broader policy that sets up spaces in the U.S. for protection to set aside elsewhere for intensified extraction of oil, gold, and more, which makes the planet political government for renewed commitments to large-scale mining and oil refining. The impact of fungibility. This is a reduction of ice of flesh to be utilized as a commodity at will. This was what allowed for the trade of black people as gold and native people as nature. The alternative solves by creating a grammar refusal that can grapple with a larger colonial history of personhood. Even if I lose y'all, I win this link. An internal link turns their app because it makes their rights-based approach to nature create more forms of extraction elsewhere and more forms of militarism through their rendering of nature as military.
Jackie just gave us a microphone. Let me plug it in before crosstalk so we can quickly see if we are better.
Yeah.
Cool. Appreciate you all. Hello, hello. How is this? Can you hear us? Is this better?
Yeah.
Meh.
No, it's good.
Let me see if I. How about this? Is this better?
Yeah, that's good. Like you're fine.
Sounding good? Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Nico, you good?
Indeed.
Cool, yeah. On framework, if the app is an artifact, how do we weigh the good parts of our research against the links?
Cool. So one, our interpretation says that we should weigh our argument is that we should be able to generate links from more than the plan. So one, we think that if you're invested in fucked up rhetoric, you should fucking lose. Second, we think that rhetoric gives objective value to the plan as a good idea. Thus, those reps influence policymaking means you should lose if they are fucked up.
I understand that, but how do we weigh the good parts of the research against those different rhetorical investments?
Yeah, well, one, we think that the 1AC has already happened. Thus, those good parts are overshadowed by the fucked up parts, i.e., like the link debate on the extraction just had. Second, I think that our argument, if you're gonna fucking make a moot the fucking 1AC argument, is that one, we are always talking about the 1AC and always talking about the way in which it's invested different rhetorical infrastructures. So if you're talking about how do you weigh your scholarship, against the K, I think that our argument is about the way in which that scholarship should always be tied to an orientation towards the end of the world, of course. Second,
Understood.
it should also be oriented in a way that allows for niggas to live.
Okay. The alt extension, I know you talked about how the alt rejects legal narratives. What are the narratives that the alt would endorse instead or in favor?
Why do I have to endorse other narratives? I think that one, the Beller evidence is a critique of the way in which governments or institutions attempt to trade different narratives of violence in exchange for more violence. So we think that these attempts to attempt to create a new kind of language of personhood, I think it's fucked up. We think that the alternative disrupts the borders between person and non-person by constantly rejecting those lines that are drawn.
Okay. How do we reject those borders when there's instances of clear militarism? What would that look like in those contexts of the basing violence?
Yeah, so it uses blackness as an interpretive lens to interrogate the assumptive logics of that militarism shit. So where at the top of the 2AC where you're just the military is the linchpin of racial capitalism, I think our argument is that, rather it's the United States or the world that structures racial capitalism. And instead you are just trying to treat a symptom of it, which makes it so that you're attempt to redeem the United States or redeem the United States military by creating this bar on quartering is just, another cover for different forms of violence.
One last question. This Edwards evidence, how will the US crack down post-plan if we literally abolish the military?
Yeah, so like our argument is about, well, first of all, I don't know where the fuck you get this idea that you're gonna abolish the entire fucking
Okay.
military. The plan
How
doesn't
does
mandate that.
crackdown
Second of
happen?
all, this fucking idea that, like the military is going to change it because of your discourse in this round is our fucking argument, our fucking link argument on the way that your model is fucked up.
Cool. We're good.
Disclosure. T case.
Is there a doc?
There's just one card, and I sent it in the body.
Cool.
Let me know when y'all are good.
Ari and I got it. We're good.
Makes good. Kane looks like they're organizing things. Are you good? They're good. CEDA is not dead yet, but Wake's wants to finish it off. Wake has 50 coaches. We have one, which is an impact magnifier. The Thetis claims our interpretation that affirmative should disclose the AFF to teams that have no program to go back to. If they lose, they eliminate that coaching and force us to read generics. It gives the AFF infinite link spin and prevents any change to a negative ballot. T. We will concede there we mean an interpret nature now. You get to answer solvency advocate theory. Our interpretation is that the 1AC must include a piece of evidence that advocates for the plan to be implemented. Standards 1 is limits. Literature is the only functional check on the topic. Removing it makes the negative burden impossible. 2 is ground. There is no advocate. There will not be a piece of causal evidence to produce a disad, and they can perm any counterplan. 3 is predictability. Anything else means that the affirmatives can defend literally anything that has anything to do with it, and that the negative has no idea how to answer it, even if that they have read literally everything that literaturely overlaps with the topic. They've highlighted around the sites of the WNEC. It says that they have grounds to be mad, just like Americans at the British, which is not a legal determinant voter for education. And debatability means that you should give the app 0 solvency, vote negative on presumption, and give us hallelujah on the links because no one is writing about the plan. Their solvency advocate is from a podcast and has no intent of advocating the fucking 1AC. Their use of the highlighting and cross-text is fucked. You should probably vote them down. There is no explanation of how the app produces any of the internal links to solve literally any of the impacts in the 1AC. They have read one card that just says that militarism is bad, is that we are invading other people's homes, just like the British soldiers did, and using it to write an affirmative with no explanation of how it legally works, how it is going to be implemented, and there is no piece of evidence that says that it actually does anything. I'm gonna do the turns. Extend the escalation to have the 1AC's indications of escalation shifts the responsibility and accountability of threats onto black and brown persons. Escalation argues inevitable scale up and an affective charge to engender violence and achieve mass destruction. Private technology and the military have blurred boundaries between domestic insiders and foreign outsiders, creating domestic others marked as objects for surveillance and crackdown. The impact is scaling up. The military police entertainment complex profits from images of black patients at sites to justify their targeting and elimination. And the app does not get rid of the fucking military. Only the alternative creates theoretical death engagement with the language and discourses of conflict that is key to critique differences of power. Even if we lose the alt, if we win the link, it means their impacts are inevitable because the logic of escalation itself requires the creation of threats to eliminate and to sustain itself, which means that their plan will endlessly make threats to guarantee their eternal link chain. They say that it is distinct because they blame the US, but they have no explanation of this in the context of our evidence, which is that any explanation of escalation is first of all incorrect and second of all re-entrenches violence. Extend the state turn the 1AC's attempts to use state policy to fight back against contingent violence, impose a non-black people securist junior partnership with the political and libidinal economies of anti-blackness to achieve equal rights. European rights discourse prescribes the transformation of black slaves into responsible and reasonable men that align with enlightenment humanity that knows itself as not black. That makes the planned investment of bad things and protections of the state and obscures the way human recognition through civil rights has evaded black being the WNEC's description of catastrophe because of a lack of personhood activates a liberal hope that requires the state as a vehicle for freedom, which intensifies and obscures the terror that makes black others and absolve communities of anti-black violence. The impact is cruel optimism and exploitation of hope that finds metaphysical violence as a solution for violence and reproduces the conditions that make existence unbearable. The affirmative sustains black suffering by dressing itself as a solution to anti-black violence that is unobtainable. The impact is unending cycle of violence, of metaphysical and material abuse that they attempt to get us to work and struggle for a future which does not exist. Warren and 15. The politics of opens are metaphysical structure that sustains black suffering. This exploitation of hope is met with metaphysical violence and masquerades as solution for all linearity to be for sure instrumental political level never the idea of the comes to produce conditions that render existence unbearable for blacks in place. Relief in a maybe political hope becomes a vicious and abusive cycle of struggle. We encircle an object free to be released that is inaccessible because it doesn't relieve it, so we continue to struggle and work as black youth are slaughtered and immediately black lives attempt to end the cycle of insanity that political hopes promotes and the alt stops by submitting to a black grammar of suffering that is able to confront the dilemmas of state organization and a level of abstraction that their orientation towards policy fails to reach. Even if we lose the old, we the league means to go NEG on presumption because legal personhood structurally requires anti-blackness to reproduce violence, which makes their impacts inevitable. Defense. Instead, Reisman and Russia will not escalate a war. They seek economic prosperity and will avoid war because they know they'll lose. Ukraine does not disprove because it's a regional conflict that it won't escalate. Proves our argument that even if it causes conflict that the U.S. intervenes, it won't cause war. Our evidence assumes U.S. imperialism and assumes the direction of war there. In turn, the links are predicated on other actors, which means that they must win an argument that Russia will escalate a war or do something to escalate that conflict with the U.S. because all of their evidence is just indicative of the way the U.S. likes to have bases and no U.S.-China war nukes interdependence and power disparity. Nor left evidence says that China is afraid of the U.S. and will avoid conflict. The U.S. and China relations are nowhere as bad as necessary to cause war, which takes out the impact extend. The archive evidence war with North Korea is not possible. The conflicts in 93 and 06 were de-escalated, which assumes the uniqueness question to other superpowers don't win a war. And no, Russia war's NATO stability. Putin cares about domestic laws and conflict won't be minimalized. Trevin and 18. NATO CEDA for months appears alive. Trump's word have changed the been employment, higher mobility, and allies agree. Spending should go when there's no interest in taxing Baltic states or Poland. The Tunes may concern domestic. He calls for ties with the West, looking to ease tensions and start dialogue. Damascus will not be captured between limitable. It's not likely to take the form of military attack for yourself. New wars are far from acting, and no U.S.-China war. Lee and 20 deterrent to a flare of our strong in U.S.-China relations. It is hard to decouple closely intertwined economy. China is the largest world sources and largest market. China and the U.S. both are adept at operating in gray, have more options, and more both are adept at operating in gray zones. The U.S. can wield sanctions when both have many tools. Why would they rush to war? A country needs will to fight before going to war. Having fought for years of meaningless war, the U.S. is weary when it comes to economy silly and is facing domestic challenges. China would not recklessly start a war. Nico sending it.
We're gonna wait to start prep until we get those cards.
Yeah, that's
Also,
okay.
really quickly, our coaches just sent us the thing to get dinner. We're gonna fill it out really fast and then start prep, just so you all know. Cool.
Anna's just plugging their computer in again, and then we're starting prep.
All right, we are starting prep. We have
750.
okay.
Am I wrong?
Yeah, you're right. Starting now.
350. I do not believe there are any cards.
Can you hear us any better now? Like, is this at all an improvement? Yes. Oh, okay, phew. That's good at least.
Okay. It's gonna be case, topicality, the disclosure page, and then can you all hear me okay? Yep. Okay.
Just give me a second to turn off.
No, I'm not putting it up there. Okay, I will give you a second.
Can you get that one more time?
Yeah, case, topicality, disclosure page. And then the okay. Is everyone good? All judges are good. Kane, you're good?
Mm-hmm.
No?
No, that's it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Emporia is good? Okay, sweet. The United States military kills millions for imperial project causes rampant sexual violence, destroys the environment as a hub for white supremacist recruitment and training. U.S. interventionist policy enabled by bases produces multiple hotspots that escalate and go nuclear as other countries react to U.S. aggression. The plan solves invest Third Amendment rights in nature and makes quartering military personnel in anywhere in the world illegal, specifically through military bases, outweighs in terms of decay. Military and police share equipment, info, and personnel. The AFF to break global anti-imperialist efforts with domestic abolition creates breathing room for movement across the globe to flourish by eliminating the largest counterinsurgency force in the history of the world. The escalation is that we have not painted black people in the light that their concepts. They have no evidence of it. We have said that the U.S. imperialist warfare is gradually escalating, i.e. progressing in intensity. That's all. No link to police and entertainment complex. The app is an intervention in those logics. We do not enjoy talking about militarism, but it is necessary to learn the details of policy to build sustained anti-war movements, which is the row house evidence that they dropped. We should not separate the long array of slavery and anti-blackness for U.S. imperial projects abroad. We should know its continued differences throughout time. That allows us to make target interventions that have likely death stakes that will evidence their impact that does not make our impacts inevitable. The U.S. cannot create more threats because militarism cannot be based anywhere. There's no way to start wars. There's no link to describing U.S. escalating. We're not saying others would escalate. We don't pathologize them. Only we have evidence that the U.S. is hell bent on starting wars now and miscalculating. Yes, escalation. All their evidence is pre-Ukraine, most from pre-COVID. Only we have evidence that speaks to basic causing escalation with Russia, China, and North America. They said Euro rights discourse is bad. This would be more on the continued, but continued interventions and expansion of it is good. We don't extend legal personhood, which is what this link is about. But Third Amendment rights are good. They limit the U.S.'s ability to enact imperialism in global South countries like Bolivia, where it is trying to. There's no uniqueness. Constitutionalism currently animates fascism in this world. The plan does not increase our power because the military wouldn't invade their homes without the plan. Strategic essentialism is good. Using the Third Amendment against U.S. hegemony exposes hypocrisies of imperialism and destitutes the ability of the U.S. to insert preponderant power. That's Casey. American exceptionalism to decide their argument is don't use the U.S. law ever, despite anti-basic activists calling for the plan, which is paternalizing. Now, the topicality argument, sovereignty advocacy theory, is a reason to reject arguments, not the team, but we do have a sovereignty advocate. Number one is the Casey evidence, which says that we should extend the Third Amendment to say that the countries are an extension of people's homes. It says that people would have the right to seek grievances against the United States for the United States invading in those places. It specifically answers the non-rhetorical question with yes, and it says the way you should do so is extending those doctrines. Everything that I'm about to extend on topicality proves that we meet this argument, but we are also sovereignty advocates. There's no bright line. This is arbitrary. It's self-serving and infinitely regressive because there's no definition of what the literature constitutes. And if it's topical, they should have been able to predict it. Extend or we this answers their solvency push as well as the solvency advocates argument. Even if the plan can't be extended beyond U.S. geographical bounds, it's not NEG perception because they dropped that the police are military and we stop those invasions with their anti-black and similar colonials, which is two ways inherency. But we really meet anyway. The U.S. vests the right to announce jurisdiction on the land it places its bases on, even if the U.S. has never done this before. The way this topic was written enables us to do so, which is the problem with the resolution, not the act. This is crucial. The U.S. extends rights outside of geographical boundaries all the time. U.S. bases that exist, Guantanamo, rights to rivers that flow through multiple countries, rights to oceans, etc. And the U.S. does things outside its jurisdiction. Also, all the time, reasonability. They drop competing interpretations causes racism. You should always prioritize. Defense. Now, the disclosure flow. Disclosure is a norm, not a rule. There's no resolution basis for it. Debate exists before the wiki, and hard debate is good debate. We disclosed. The only follow-up question was was Eddie Carnes read by the club this year, which we have not counter-interpretation new apps against. Emporia and CEDA are good. It causes argument, innovation, and critical thinking. It forces players to think on their feet, which is good. New apps are a sound of respect. Semis and CEDA, y'all are a great team. We only read old apps. We know we can be. It's way more disrespectful for us to disclose our new app. Besides this, there's no link to their offense. They can still work with their coach and predict the affirmative, and they dropped it. If it's topical, they should be able to predict it. But we should keep the same level of intellectual and competitive rigor as the NDT. We are not killing Emporia's program because they dropped that extending one more round today is not the make or break. Valuing individual debaters doing so causes cruel optimism because ballots will not save the program. It will only cause Audubon and let U.S. directors wipe your hands clean. Now the and our counter interpretation is that Emporia should go to finals if they win the debate, which solves their offense. Now the critique. Framework. Debate should not solely be a war position. Competition is a good way to evaluate debates and test revolutionary advocacies because it sets the trade-offs that matter in organizing, especially when it comes to non-performance reforms. That means we get the apps impacts against y'all. It is not just plan focus, which obviates most of their offense, but you should evaluate the plan based on the justification we provided. Clash and skill and cost analysis requires you to refuse to separate the play from its epistemology. They've dropped the uniqueness question of the legal person. The rights policy is inevitable as the state press. We need to engage in tools that we have because laws at a rate of genocide must be met with resistance, which is why you see Lazar and Chupak. We win even if they win framework. You can't evaluate the law as a strategy except in its particularity, which I answered above. There's no link to their dialogue. Is that we're not just the plan; it's in the context of the affirmative advocacies and our things. It is not white fluidity, but rather white people deploying our social capital against racial capitalism, which was the drop king evidence from the Treaty, which is a good project for us and judges to take. They said the link debate. I will do that here. First, the permutation solves. I'm not going for the internalism net benefit proper, but the logistics design lily pad design definitely straight term the net benefits. Logistics design basis provide the logistical support network for the military to be able to launch extractive wars and post-colonial development, which straight terms and legs only the affirmative curtails that lily pads. DA individual refusal of different bases is bad because the U.S. will just shift to another place where communities are less resilient, which is why only the plan which solves all of bases solves now the links proper top level framing argument. There's no uniqueness, and we solve all of it. They would not recreate bases elsewhere. One, cops, they can't be quartered anywhere. Makes police not exist, which was the Treaty evidence. So they don't have the ability to have crackdowns on black people at home or abroad. But their argument ignores the African diaspora that's killed by the U.S. military, which only the plan solves. Second, can't do more control because you can't have bases of military quoted anywhere. Third, can't do bases on the ocean because that's part of nature. So no aircraft carriers either, which was our answer. It's not no body snatching disad. Perms are test the test of competition and to say if there is a compatibility test between the telos of the app and the alternative is not stealing your labor because the negative does not have intellectual property over their critique. That would be a double term of the rest of the arguments that they made. They said that we allow more U.S. control of nature. One, no uniqueness. The U.S. thinks it has control and seizing land from military bases, coups, obstruction of the global south now for interventions. The plan stops their ability to be there and stay there because they can be quoted in nature, so on land or in a country as per one AC cases. So we straight turn this link to no bases on oceans. That's about the extraction decide post-colonial development is stopped by the affirmative. You can't send the U.S. military in to secure resources. One AC Springer and shoebox since this creates breathing room for actually existing anti-colonial governments to be able to refuse U.S. interventions, which means no presumption. They said we still see it as having resources, no uniqueness. The U.S. thinks that now and sets aside areas of resources to be able to extract, which answers all of their arguments. We have a uniqueness argument that frames every link. There's no presumption argument because the plan is a good idea.
Restarting now.
All right, all right, all right. Can you hear me in the stand, please?
Threw it a little far that time.
Yeah, you threw it real far. I don't know what's with you and throwing these stands. Okay. Two. The order shall be case the K. I guess the procedural first, and then case K. Everybody good? Looking like it, looking like it. Dope. First on the procedural, sure, you meet, doesn't matter, no offense, cool. Case. Code evidence says that Russia has a right to take countermeasure, but does not have to make a predictive claim that it will, which means the recency is irrelevant or evidence may be old, but the words are not outdated. Russia is not interested in escalating conflict, which is the key distinction for the Ukraine conflict. But if anything, that is good evidence. Russia is not interested in war with the U.S. We've expanded our military aid to Ukraine extensively, and Russia has not responded. Our evidence provides an explanation for this. They have an economic interdependent deterrence prevented. Listen, Russia will not escalate war. They still don't need to do that now. Go to the K, extend the alternative. The thug, the slave, the nigga, the Negro, the middle passes make America great again. The war on terror and the war on drugs are all endless repetitions of symbiotic violence, the violence of slave conditions, the possibilities for science and concepts, which is the scale in terms of eligibility under the way. See, the alternative produces a new language of obstruction as a tool for niggas to navigate an anti-black world vote. Next, to refuse the political conditions of the way. See, if I win a link, you can vote negatively, even if I lose the all because it provides them proves they are still invested in anti-blackness and should be rejected. That's a bubble theory evidence. No direct answer to it coming out of the 1 yard now. Though a lot of the fucking their answers to the King are mostly defense first. Their extension to King, no fucking warrant, and no answer to my response on refusal, constantly rejecting the structures of violence, and that they've conceded with Miller's analysis that words can kill, and that semi-oxide material means the alternative is always that challenge of the material passes of anti-blackness makes it so none of their logistics often makes any goddamn sense in the context of this logistics. It's that because the alternative is always invested in this kind of rejection of the way the state functions, and they've also conceded that the alternative is in the direction of the end of the world, aka the end of the United States, makes it so that we are able to solve all of their fucking offense. And also the only way that they can win this debate is on a permutation. They extend the body snatching this at the perm is a link. It demonstrates physical attachments where the F desires the presence of black people in the plan, i.e. all the examples in the 1 AR where they say that legal rights are going to be really good for black people, or that the military is going to do a bunch of really fucked up shit to black people, are all instances where they have these civilic attachments where they desire the presence of black people in the belief, but they have phobic attachments where they want to criminalize the race of black thought that seeks an into the political reality of the affirmative, i.e. all these fucking dissents and these understandings of the way that cruel optimism should function. The impact is fungibility, no answer to it in the fucking 1 yard, where black people are political props to animate and make successful the politics of the way. See, refusal is mutually exclusive because the orientation of politics is in the direction of the end of the world, while the plan seeks to sustain the status quo for niggas. Even if they win a perm, that just means the alt goes away. We still have disads external to the alt. They need to answer the extend the Edwards evidence conceded. Also, it's a propagation propaganda dissad. The 1AC's retooling of legal rights is a strategy for neoliberal governance to control the image of black achievement to justify violence. The United States should best Third Amendment court anti-quartering rights in nature there. Find evidence. It means the military has been particularly focused on overcoming anti-black resistance by moving operations, anti-base resistance by moving operations to locations where inhabitants possess fewer democratic rights, offering the military greater freedom to operate. The language of legal rights is viewed as an black empowerment with state-sanctioned governmental agencies circulate images of black liberation to promote U.S. democracy, which allow for official anti-racist, acquire radicalism, dilute class consciousness, and legitimize the hedge of the security state. The impacts for Trump the reaction device the flash ones unenjoyment, which allow for the forced interpolation of black people into U.S. empire building. The alternative solves by creating a language of distraction that delegitimizes the political authority of legal rights in the security state. Even if I lose the alt, you can vote NEG because this link turns the case because it means legal rights will be weaponized to erase black insurgency and justify global counterterror. No basis doesn't mean no fucking military. Our argument is that they will project their power overseas and use these images of legal rights to justify more, justify getting a hotel in fucking Bolivia or some shit to fucking lead to their military power. That's Edwards evidence now. Extend the extraction just as the way sees attempt to establish rights in nature, naturalize the colonial history, and is seen as a move to overcome Western dualism or militarism through sale recognition, which reproduces the post-colonial development responsible for environmental destruction. Their Casey evidence is a fucking podcast. Please read of real solvency advocates. We will concede that you should reject the argument. Not the team means that you should not give them any of their offense on the case. Turn solvency. They have no evidence that says there's an enforcement measure. It's not arbitrary. It's a yes no question. Even if you air av, it won't matter because there's ever reasonability. Just flows fucking negative. Now, pretty much all I have to do is answer these. Not really a lot of offense. Yeah, so even as the YC's proposal foregrounds not extraction of the state depends on its revenue through the commodification of carbon and broader policies, the impact is fungibility direction of ice flesh be utilized as a commodity at the will of humanity. The alternative solves by agreeing a grammar refusal that can grapple with the larger colonial history of personity. Even if I lose all the internal link turns the app, makes it their right approach to nature, create more extraction elsewhere. That's Ross and Manfield extend our Interban framework. You should view the YC as a rhetorical artifact with images and representations intentionally programmed into the YC. Remember, fiat illusory, no fucking answer. Vote neg on presumption. The plan never happens means they don't solve their impacts, and the images and representations should be rejected. That means the case of prior question, the only impacts that matter are the ones tied to their rhetoric. They have remember fillers. Words can kill all forms of expressivity. Have been captured the dialectics, capital accumulation, radical dispossession. They can't go for extinction outweighs when they concede the colonization of semiotics makes extinction inevitable. Militarism makes war inevitable. Climate change are locked in, and we control the internal link level of the debate because all forms of governance have been commodified for the extraction of life. Flesh, the real violence, net benefits should filter any residual class fairness or education offense. The gatekeeping offense, fire conceded. They're the ones who decide whether they can engage with the planet's consequences. Makes it so they always shift the goalposts to make it so that niggas are never able to engage with more than the anti-black shit of their plan.
We have 350 starting now. Hello, can you all hear me okay? Cool,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I flowed the 2-hour extension of the disclosure theory / solvency arguments on the K, so I'm going to answer it there just so you all know. That's the order is going to be case in the K. Okay. Emporia, are you both good? Awesome. Appreciate the thumbs up. DMW, Kane, and James all good to go. All right. I need a sip of water and let's do it. U.S. militarism outweighs in terms of K bases worldwide, authorized spectrums of violence from ecocide to nuclear conflicts to sexual powers. You can't hear me?
No, it's doing the latency watery thing again.
Yeah.
How about now? Better?
Sound check. Just do it again. Sound check.
All right. Read my overview again. U.S. militarism outweighs in terms of K bases worldwide, authorized spectrum of violence. Good.
Fine.
Cool. I put the microphone right next to me. Hopefully that works. Tech sucks. Hopefully we can get through this. All right. Everyone good to go again. Take 3. U.S. militarism outweighs in terms of K bases worldwide, authorized spectrums of violence from ecocide to nuclear conflict with China, Russia, and Korea to sexual and interpersonal violence. It also empowers the police at home to arm themselves and intervene in communities throughout the United States and world. Only the plan solves Third Amendment rights in nature bans militarism as a whole because the whole of the earth is seen as deserving bordering rights. That means you can vote AFF without the permutation because the plan is key to bridge anti-imperialist efforts worldwide and create breathing room for movements, indirect action, and new meaning making without U.S. empire fully armed and breathing down our backs. The case arguments are wrong and all are too old to be applicable. They do not assume the U.S. provokes China and Russia. So even though Putin and Xi might not want to go to war, the U.S. certainly does. They considered Ari's analysis from the 1A, or the U.S. is hell-bent on going to war because racial capitalism creates profit motives to expand militarism abroad. Even if that's not the case, they've conceded that global warming and sexual and interpersonal violences and cops all outweigh and are impacts that we can solve independently. Now go to the K. 2 or 3 reasons why we can win this debate without winning framework and without winning the permutation. 1, the leap padding DA. Only the plan creates a challenge to the material apparatus of capitalist imperialism by saying all bases do not have the right to exist because the U.S. soldiers cannot be quartered in all of nature. Acts of refusal fail because localized anti-base protest causes the U.S. to shift to less resilient territories, which is why only the plan's blanket ban result through rights solved. 2 is the logistics DA. Military bases provide the logistical support network for the U.S. ability to enact interventions abroad. The plan destitutes those imperial supply chains that otherwise make coups and resource extraction inevitable. The alt cannot solve because individual acts of refusal, especially in spaces like debate, cannot scale up to the violence cannot scale to resolve the violences of imperialism. Think about their case push when in the 2NR when they said that the U.S. deterrence prevents Russia war, which proves they are invested in military industrial complex talking points, not to resolve anti-blackness through refusal, especially when they're relying on, I don't know, economic interdependencies to check all war. Are you shitting me? You obviously link way more to your own offense than we ever did. 3rd, our model of debate is good for training debaters in the skills of anti-war advocacy. Only we have read empirical evidence that learning the details of anti-militarist policy proposals is able to spill out of this debate space to resist imperial war-making capabilities. Now, framework, weigh the plan's implementation based on the justifications provided that solve their offense because they can prove our rhetorical investments are bad justifications for the plan, which allows them to have link ground, but only we are in terms of our offensive clash because their model is a link you lose model. That's per the 2NC cross-ex because in that proof they have no way for you as judges to weigh or evaluate our offense or compare our research to theirs. Also proves that their research is equally suspect and worthwhile to debate, which only our model incentivizes because it provides a stasis point of the plan from which to evaluate whether or not there is offense on both the AFF and NEG side, which is key for evolutionary testing because if their alternative is worse than the plan, then they should lose. That's also an impact to debatability that outweighs, which they've conceded in the 2NR. Law is a train of militarism that must be met with resistance. That also uniquely proves why we straight turn their fiat K because it's a unique reason why engaging in the law is key. They conceded our uniqueness claim that law, statecraft, and the legal rights paradigms are inevitable and will engage us if we do not learn how to engage them. That means even if fiat is illusory, contingent struggles are within debate spaces are key to check the excesses of militarism and debating about them with deploying strategic capital as per the King evidence is another straight turn because it means that we are not imagining or circulating images of repression suppression nor resiliency, but mobilizing as per the Biden and Lazare evidence that was also conceded in the 2NR. That means we can deconstruct hegemonic worldviews, things like seeing the U.S., I don't know, the vis-a-vis Westphalian borders that they have done this throughout this entire debate. They are the reason their arguments on words can kill our material. It's the reason why our framework interpret is good. You should not separate the content of our advocacy from the representations and epistemology of the app. Words can kill when they justify killing, which is why liberal think tanks end up killing Black people by justifying bases. They drop 3 key framing arguments here. One, rights policy is inevitable as a statecraft. You have to use the tools we have because, again, law is a trait of militarism. 2, you can't evaluate law as a strategy except in particularities. That means you have to refuse to separate the plan's action from its context. 3rd, no pornotroping impact. Emporia dropped that white people should deploy our social capital against militarism and anti-blackness, which requires research and discussions of anti-black violence, and yes, requires evaluation of it by the judges. Anything else causes white passivity, which is way worse. They are wrong about the semiotic violence. We link turn this above. The emphasis makes it significantly harder for the U.S. to wage war and intervene. They don't get bases. They don't get commander homes. They can't have aircraft carriers and oceans, and they certainly can get a hotel in Bolivia because they'd still be quartered on the land. At best, the impact of this link is a solving deficit to the app, but they dropped the framing issue that we extended every speech that even mitigating the U.S.'s imperial powers a little bit allows for breathing room to actually existing anti-colonial struggles that are under the boot of U.S. imperialism now. They also dropped there's no uniqueness for their link in the 2NR. The U.S. currently sees land as a resource to extract from which it launches interventions and coups in the U.S. military's larger consumer of national resources and fossil fuels. Even if you don't buy the entirety of our straight turn to the link to still vote app because they've not proven the plan is bad. That just be that it doesn't stop all of imperialism, which is not a burden we should have to meet to prove that the app and research are a good idea. Our solvency advocate is out engaging in a thought experiment about U.S. jurisdiction in the Constitution, but they dropped the TRs that are even in the 1AR. The U.S. does things outside its geographic boundaries and calls jurisdiction all the time, so the plan does expose those hypocrisies and use it against them, which is the reason why our model of fiat is good. The alt does not solve unless, but if they're corrected, it ends all of the United States, and that proves compatibility and permity both solves. You don't link to body snatching dissat because A, we did not steal your labor, but rather test the compatibility of the telos of our 2 methods, which is key to revolutionary testing, which I already impacted out above. B, we challenge the epistemic binary that produces philia and phobia to begin with. That's why people cordon off the Black radical tradition from anti-militarism, which is not only epistemologically bankrupt, but bad pedagogically, which is a unique net benefit to our permutation that they have not grappled with. We also turn co-optimism as a result and proves you do not link to fungibility because there's no distancing, nor is there a way in which people can reattach themselves to Black thought when rather we have oriented ourselves and our indebtedness to the Black radical tradition in a way in which we presented a solution to solve the impacts that they have proven that might exist in the status quo. The Edwards arguments, we solve this. A, there's military bases and cops are other reasons why that the impacts might happen. Thus, we solve the impact even if there's a risk we link. Plus, we've proven our epistemology is good, so we solve it. Now the circulating of images is wrong. We solve this because we curtail the ability for those people to have the military weapons in the first place. We do not link to their weaponization to erase Black movements. We stop it because although we do not build hotels in Bolivia when the Bolivia grounds have actual rights. So it's also why we don't recreate a Western dualism. That's why the podcast is a good argument because it explains how only by granting legal rights in nature and challenging the ways in which we see it as objects to commodify and build upon via military bases, it allows us to solve. That's why the government is not co-opted, and even why that's uniqueness for our engagement being key. That's why even our impacts do outweigh, because even if they're right about semiotics locking in and extinction, that's why only a permutation and case solve. Good debate, Emporia.
Good debate.
It was a pleasure debating you all.
Yeah, good debate. Good debate.
Good debate, everybody.
Would you all like a judge doc?
Yeah.
Cool. We'll work on that now.
Nico, I guess you could also just send a card doc to, parody.
Yeah, I'm on it.
Wake card doc sent.
Hi, everyone. Are all of the judges here? Okay. Congratulations to everyone for making it to the final four of the CEDA Nationals tournament. It has been a pleasure to watch everyone's careers this year, from a team who stood their ground and kept going despite university, massive amounts of trauma, and a team who always kind of gives the definition of what nice is. I've really enjoyed everything you all brought to this activity this year. The decision in this debate on a 3-0 is for the affirmative from Wake Forest.
Great debate, Emporia.
Great debate. Thank you for meeting us.
I'll leave the rest to the judges. Great debate by all.
Okay, if I can go first, I'd appreciate that. I vote AF, but I am definitely not comfortable with voting AF. I think at the end of the day, I think Wake is winning. Literally, I think the verse literally lost his argument all the time, which is why I'm kind of frustrated about it because it's pretty, I think, not that good. That talking about anti-militarism strategies is good for building coalitions to challenge militarism. I agree with the negative that this evidence, the sovereignty evidence, is literally dog shit. I will use the word that it is bad. Do not smile. It is bad. Like, Savannah is absolutely right. But the reason why they're able to get away with that is because I don't think the block or the 200 has a really robust response to the Rojas evidence and some of the other pieces of offense that they get net benefits to that justify like permutations, or even not even just a permutation, that talking about the AF is a good thing. I think there are two advantages to this that don't get really answered well, that somehow the AF gets rid of the police, which I still think isn't just answered. I don't think that you have like an on-point response to that. And the action DA, and I know, Nico, you get to 200, it's like, there's only extend the warrant, but like you have to like hold the line to that kind of thing, right? And I think those things are effectively dropped out of the block, which is the problematic. And the other thing that I think it is that I think the negative has all of the pieces to actually wax the AF after the block, but they're just not sequenced in a way that optimizes the stuff that you have, right? I think you should have went for the cruel optimism portion more than you should have went for the body snatching day, because Ari does not answer Warren coming out of the 1AR. Like, that is cold conceded in my mind. So if you frame that, use that as an impact to those cool optimism arguments, frame it for your better evidence, because it's the better link argument that you have coming in this debate, especially when you're going for this rhetoric framing argument, right? And I think you can impact this as the Edwards evidence, because it means the things that the AF talks about, i.e. Black people join the protest, they are the ones that are first targeted because of things like anti-Blackness. The AF does not center that in its mode of analysis and way of thinking of anti-militarism, right? That in turn creates a reinvestment into the rights frameworks that is steeped in anti-Blackness because of the grandiose claims, the affirmative, that they could abolish the police by abolishing bases is obscene, and be like, look, if we win our framing arguments about how words can kill, i.e. that means that they literally have Black people invest in a thing that will cause their own death. I.e., you can see that in terms of the Obama campaign slogan, like, yes, we can. A bunch of people, especially a bunch of older Black people, invested in voting for the institutions, and yet there wasn't that much of a structural change post-Obama, right? But that also means that after that, niggas find themselves more or less in the same position. That means the AF's anti-militarism replicates the same dynamic through rhetorical investments in things like rights and laws, a flexible tool of resistance. I think these internal link turns to the Springer stuff that they're reading is another reason why they don't get access to permutation, because the extension of rights is Western-centric epistemology, right? I feel like having that framing argument there is really essential in this particular debate. And I think it also just allows you to make stronger arguments about like why multiracial diverse coalitions are just functionally bad for Black people. I think you can definitely use examples from like the 2020 riots and the ways in which Black and both Antifa and white counterinsurgencies were able to use Black demands, Black suffering, right, in order to obfuscate their own bullshit, which I think also gives you another layer to that ponotroping arguments that you're going for, right? So that's why that sequencing is important, because it allows all these things to sort of optimize and stack themselves in a way that just generates a consistent flow of offense and prevents them from getting the permutation. Because otherwise, that's like a good strong net benefit of the permutation, because that Springer card is actually really good. It's like one of the few pieces of evidence that I think that they have better. Like that's just the one place that I think is just one of the better things that they have in this debate. I also think if you recontextualize like your body snatching DA through some of the roots of analogy arguments that you were making earlier in the debate, that's another place where you can win, because I think it proves the move to say anti-militarism is always part of the Black radical tradition is parasitic, because that's not in the starting point of the 1AC. That is a literal afterthought of the 1AC. And then that integration justifies your body snatching framing that you ultimately go for in the 2NR. I'm with you. I don't think you need to necessarily win the alternative in this debate, because they have one, their solvency evidence, again, is absolute trash. And two, they have functionally reduced the AFF to a point where just talking about anti-militarism coalitions are good. Right. So there's a very low threshold for me to even consider like alternative solvency if you win these link arguments. James, are you raising your hand or are you saying things?
No, I'm clapping because you're spitting facts right now.
Okay. And the reason why I'm glad that you two are here, especially Nico and Savannah, because I know that you're going to be coaching. And I think this is a thing that you need to hold and keep and remember for the people that you bring in after y'all. Because, I've seen y'all debate all year. This was the weakest AF that I think you read in front of me. Like, you were better off reading my Newman. This shit was, and I think like Samantha said, this shit is garbage. Like everything else around it, but your solvency advocate is absolutely trash. And I can say that because, it's over now. All right.
I can go next, DM, if that's cool.
Go for it.
I just want to say, yeah, we can hear you. DM. Incredible debate. Thank you both so much for having me into the back. Nico, I remember when I first met you at the Brick City round robin in 2019. I saw a creative dude who didn't give a fuck what other people thought, and I'm glad you stuck through that throughout your entire time as a debater and competitor. I always learned judging you. I always learned prepping against you. You are the GOAT. You've left your mark here in debate, and we can't wait to have you back as a judge so we can hear your thoughts and perspectives as a critic. But you will absolutely be missed. You are such an awesome competitor. Agree with a lot of what Kane said. I'll try to just go through it quickly. I voted AF to vest Third Amendment legal rights of non-quartering into nature. At least, I think that will significantly curtail American military projection and also hamper or stop domestic policing activities, which allows for a sort of breathing room for socialist or anti-imperial projects, either domestically or abroad. Ultimately, I think the NEG is incredibly close to winning this debate on framework. You have a fairly uncontested theory of power claim about how semiotics are prefigured by anti-Blackness and capitalism. You've done a solid job of explaining to me why reps are both the only thing my ballot can change and also will warp the implementation of the F. You're doing great with the Edwards card to explain why even progressive reps of rights can be mobilized to violent ends. Ultimately, what stops me from voting neg is the link/link turn portion of the debate. I think that there is a slight disjunct between the neg's interpretation of treating the 1AC as a research artifact and the neg's link arguments, which predominantly revolve around how anti-Black militarism can be restaged after the plan, like the Bolivia conversation we've had throughout the AF and neg speeches. Basically, I think the NEG is lacking a more well-developed indite of the AF's representations or research. So everything Kane said before, I need shit like that, like why anti-war movements are racist and parasitic on Blackness, the escalation K, a broader Academy K argument about international movements and attempts to harmonize them. I ultimately buy that the link arguments that the NEG talks about most in the 2NR either have uniqueness issues, i.e. the US is already treating nature as an object to be exploited, or the US is already expanding its military presence abroad. Or even if I think that your link arguments are doing really well, I think that the AF's breathing space argument that even imperfect or incomplete decrease in bases would be preferable to the status quo. So I look at the Shupak evidence of the 1AC, and this is like a really illuminated quote and helpful for me voting AF, even though I think the NEG is doing really solid work on framework. Quote, even partially weakening the war machine would afford socialist initiatives outside the US room to flourish. blah, blah, blah. Immobilizing the war machine would be beneficial for every cause leftists are concerned with. So I really have that evidence as helpful as a filter to read the link debate. I don't view the alt as a viable or clear pathway to solvency, aside from refusing the conditions of possibility for the 1AC, which could be oriented towards the end of America or the end of the world. I'm not exactly sure of the various internal links between voting negative and accomplishing that goal. With a few more paragraphs explaining how endorsing linguistic abstraction or abstractive critique in the academy, then I might be more willing to pull the trigger on the alt solves the case. And Nico, this is also filtered by you saying multiple times, which you should be doing throughout the debate, that basically if you win a link, then you could be comfortable voting neg on framework, basically. So I just don't see the alt as a viable pathway. Yeah, so that's ultimately where I end up. Totally agree, Savannah. I've never judged you before. You were on fire in this debate. I really think, it's tough. Semis of CEDA, it's like a late-breaking argument, but I low-key think that there could be a viable 2&R on your solvency advocate is awful, doesn't meet the burden independently of like good research and should lose as a result. I'm not even saying in implicating solvency, which you did a great job of doing, Nico. Like you definitely mitigated. See, I mean, like straight up as a fucking procedural argument, as Savannah said it in the 1&R. The only thing that's potentially frightening is there's no bright line between what is or isn't a solvency advocate. And I guess that's true, but I think we could all just like point and laugh at the podcast solvency advocate, which is just like peer review ? Right? Like there's no fucking Academy K in this debate, really, right? So like, why not just go for fucking, you need peer reviewed evidence. Like you need people who have fucking training in this topic, right? Yeah, so I just want to say, Savannah, you very impressed me. And Nico, gonna miss you, judging you, buddy. You are the goats. BD, love y'all, but I'll see you in person, so we could talk later. But let's get DM to talk.
Can I say one more thing before DM transitions? I think what you said, like in terms of like their evidence, I think you could also make an argument about how on framework, how that implicates their model of debate in terms of how we like produce certain types of research. Because that was the thing I forgot to mention at the beginning that you just sort of triggered.
Okay. I'll be quick because it's late and tired, but congratulations to both teams. I think this is the first time, or at least at CEDA, the first time I've judged any of y'all, I think, and it was very enjoyable. Like, thank y'all for that. It was great. I think the only things I'll add on that haven't already been said by James or Kane is I definitely agree that I think the procedural for like the solvency advocate stuff in the 1&R, I do think that would have been more persuasive to me if it was gone for as a procedural in the 2&R. And secondly, I think the one thing that I think could just be something in the way I look at or judge these debates or just think about it is that I think one thing, or at least what got my ballot effectively, was I think that there's like an internal link difference between the affirmative and what the negative is solving. And I think part of this is just, I think the 2&R needs a little more clarification on like how like the internal link level of like how does the alt or how does your framework resolve your impacts? Because I think that's just a big difference. It's just, I think that there's some questions about that portion of how do you solve your internal link. Whereas I think the affirmative has some like winning some spillover arguments or like just a larger internal link of how militarism solves for a large number of impacts. There's also this question of like the lily pad DA compared to the alternative, but that's really all I can say that I would add that hasn't already been said. But this was a fantastic debate, and I'm very glad to have judged it. So thank you all.
Do you have any questions, Savannah or Nico or Squid or Logri?
Nah, thanks a bunch.
Thank you.
Appreciate y'all. It's been a fun time. Wake, pleasure. See ya.
Yeah, and I need to go over and give Arya a hug right now too, because that motherfucker really like saved your life.
Gay debate. Thank you all for judging.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate you.
Congratulations on a wonderful year. See you all.
Congrats, everybody.
Bye.